checking out episode 15 of the Enkindled Columbus podcast. You're listening to Rock Bottom by Zach Frost from his upcoming EP, Bucket List. If you want to hear more, check him out on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and anywhere else you stream music.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Enkindled Columbus. Also, did you know we started a Patreon? For as low as $2 a month, you can support the local music scene and get your name mentioned on the podcast as a supporter.
Anyways, here's the podcast.
But they tried so many times to make it right. They couldn't fight.
Welcome to the Enkindled Columbus podcast. My name's Zach.
And this is Alonzo, and today we're with Zach Frost of Zach Frost.
Hey.
What is up? We didn't plan that joke, honestly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us today. We really do appreciate it. I know we were talking right before this, and I was already trying to ask you questions, and I was like, we got to start the microphones. But we're talking about your EP Bucket List. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited for it. To start off, I guess my first question to you is, Rock Bottom, is that a single from Bucket List that's going to be onto it? Okay.
Yeah, so I'll try not to get into too much detail here, but there are 5 songs on Bucket List, 4 of which I wrote about 7 years ago. Rock Bottom I wrote last summer.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of a weird mishmash between the older songs and then Rock Bottom, which is brand new.
Right.
And I felt that Rock Bottom was the most relatable, and I put that out as a single back in April, just to kind of get the buzz going, get people interested in what I'm doing again. Mm-hmm. An album cycle used to be about 2 years in the music industry, and now it seems like it's every month. You need to be putting out new content.
Yeah, staying active, keeping the listeners ready.
Yeah.
With social media, it's like you have to be active 24/7, and I don't have the time for that. I don't know about you guys, but...
Well, luckily, there's 2 of us that run ours. So
that's very helpful.
So
that's the only way we keep it running the way we do. It's it's always between one of us, or half the time we're probably both logged in at the same time, going through and finding stuff. But yeah,
There's
it's tough.
Never
it's
enough
definitely
time.
tough.
So I put out the single just to generate some interest.
Okay.
You definitely did that, because that is my favorite song of yours that I've heard thus far.
Thank you.
I listen to everything, but that one really sticks out to me, and that one gets stuck in my head all day. I've been singing it all day.
That is the one thing people constantly tell me. They're like, I can never get that song out of my head.
Absolutely.
Strangers tell me this.
Absolutely, dude. It's like, it's melted in now.
Then I've succeeded.
So, like you said, since you've had some of these old tunes you've already wrote, and Rock Bottom being so new, do you have the same thinking going on with all your music right now, or what's changed?
I feel like I don't. As I mentioned, I wrote those songs years ago, and a lot of them are more political or me sort of growing into my own as an adult. I think I was around 23, 24 years old when I wrote them, and I felt at the time like I had something to prove. And now, these days, I'm not really trying to make a bold statement or anything. I just want to make art and make fun music.
Absolutely.
And Rock Bottom is the culmination of that mindset. Whereas the rest of the record it's not necessarily dark, but it is a little more serious and mature.
Okay.
For sure. Well, one of the things I really enjoy about your music is that your lyrics they're very well written, and they're very self-aware, which I think is really cool. Like, it's just like when I listen to it, they're super relatable, which is something that you don't hear all the time. It's not like they're not super cryptic. It's just like, these are his thoughts, and here's what they are. And I think it's so cool to hear that.
Thank you.
On the record.
That entire record was written through free writing, so it's almost like writing in your diary at the end of the day. What are you feeling right now? And then I would literally take sentences word for word and just turn them into something that rhymed. And it was definitely very candid. I didn't feel like I was trying too hard. I actually have the original free writes for the entire record, and you can see some of them are exactly word for word with what the lyrics are now.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Do you think that writing music like that, do you think that makes everything more authentic?
I do think it's more authentic. It can sometimes be a little off-putting because it's not as catchy or it's not as fun or relatable. But sometimes with art, you have to make a statement and not worry about how catchy it is.
Right.
People will respect it one way or the other, and if they don't respect it, then that's okay too, because my music is not for everyone, and I'm very aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody's got their own thing, and the listeners will come when they hear what you have to offer.
Right.
And I'm feeling very loved, so I can't complain right now.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I know. Okay, so like you, segueing using the fact you said you feel loved. So you just told us about a recent show that I guess they brought like silly string and stuff. Could you go dive into that real quick?
I would love to. So for those of you who have seen my music video for Rock Bottom, And for those of you that haven't, please check it out on my Facebook, Zach Frost Music. In the music video, we sort of act out how I was feeling emotionally when I felt at rock bottom. But through a visual medium, it's kind of hard to do that. So we use the T-shirt as a metaphor. And the silly string was the music video producer, Jacob Mooney's idea.
Okay.
He said, hey, man, let's just get some silly string and spray you with silly string. And that would look really fun and cool and kind of take away some of those dark undertones. And I played this show in Toledo on Saturday, and the guy who booked it loved the video so much that he went out and bought an entire case of silly string. And I got like halfway through my set, started playing Rock Bottom. Everybody in the room was singing along, which was crazy to me. And then the second I was about to play the first chorus, I saw the guy in the crowd like counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he like made the signal, and everybody started spraying everybody else with silly string.
That's awesome.
Myself included.
Right.
I got totally covered in pink silly string.
That's so cool, though, because you don't really see stuff like that happening all the time. Like, I've been to countless shows, everywhere, and I've never seen something like that. So it's so cool that as a local artist, you made that impact in other places to where,
it was
people
wild.
had that in their mind.
Yeah, it was really wild. I strive to make my concerts as interactive as possible because I'm just one guy. It's really hard to be a solo artist and put on a decent show.
For sure.
So,
That's something I was going to ask you about.
Yeah.
So the fact that this guy took it upon himself to make my concert more interesting actually alleviated a lot of the work that I had to do.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, afterwards, some of the people said that it was an unforgettable experience, which really resonated with me.
Yeah, isn't that so cool to be a part of something like that? You're like,
Yeah.
I ingrained a memory in someone's brain with my
wild.
music.
Yeah, it was wild.
Well, that's super cool to hear. So, mentioning being a solo artist, so I think we got this information off your Spotify. Being you're a punk drummer,
Yeah.
So you've been in that band setting. What's
Sure.
it like leaving the band? Playing with other people to doing it yourself. What do you think's the biggest challenge with that is?
Well, there are many challenges, but I'd say the biggest is decision making because you're always second guessing yourself, or you're always trying to create something, but you get stuck. You get stuck at a roadblock in terms of lyrical writing or writing a catchy melody or knowing when to take a bridge. It can be really difficult, and I think that I continue to struggle with writing, especially as I get older and have different experiences. It almost feels like I've already written it all, and, how do I start over?
Yeah.
So it's really tough because when I was in a band, whether I was playing drums or some other instrument, there was always somebody else to chime in and say, oh, let's try this, or let's try something different than that. And it was easy back then.
Yeah, it could be a little harder when you're on your own and you have to make all the executive decisions.
Yeah.
And,
And there are plenty to make.
Right. Absolutely. What do you think is the most important thing you've took from working in the music industry so far?
Well, I'd say that the most important thing is to not take yourself too seriously. You had mentioned a moment ago before we were on air that I'm thus far the only person to send you a press kit.
Right.
I do take myself very seriously. I take my music very seriously. I take my image very seriously. And I take the work that I do on stage very seriously. But if I'm not having fun, then nobody else is going to be having fun.
You're right.
So while I do present a package deal where I look professional in my photographs, for example, I don't want people to show up and think that it's going to be boring or less exciting because I'm a solo artist. So I try to have fun. I try to make sure that my audience is having fun. And I try to, when using social media, make people laugh because that's what keeps them coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
I think that's a good way to try to connect to people. And I think, do you think taking yourself too serious, like not yourself, but just with anyone, do you think that could ruin their music in a way?
Absolutely. I had a lot of pride in my younger years, which sabotaged a lot of potential opportunities that I had.
Okay.
Even though I was just a drummer in the majority of the bands in which I played, I still felt that the drummer had an equal voice in writing.
Absolutely.
And I was often at odds with my colleagues in my bands because I wanted to do something one way and they wanted to do it the other way. And it's hard when you're younger, and especially drummers, when somebody tells us how to do our job, it can be almost insulting, or at least we take it that way,
right.
as I was wont to do when I was younger. I almost became resentful because we are just so inexperienced at the time we don't know when to draw the line or when to admit that we're wrong or that we've made a mistake. The biggest thing that I've learned is to listen to a producer when they tell you that something needs to be changed. Whether you like it or not, they're telling you this for good reason. Okay. And often you have to set your pride aside and try something new.
Right.
Yeah, you got to think about the bigger picture.
Absolutely. Do you think it's hard to find people to trust, though, like in that aspect? Like someone that, like, how do you know what's good for my music? What do you think?
Well, I'll give you a good example. It's very hard for me to trust people because I'm such a know-it-all. I think that I have all the answers.
Okay.
Even when I clearly don't. So recently we were just mixing the very last song on Bucket List. It's called Cheap Wine.
Okay.
And it has like 4 choruses in it. It's like a 6-minute long song. And a buddy of mine, Jack Snyder, he used to play in a band called City Lights, and some of those members are now in a band called Beartooth. So Jack has been a successful guitar player for a number.
Absolutely. I know Beartooth.
Yeah.
So Jack used to write with a couple of the guys in Beartooth, and they were in a band, and they toured all over the country. And Jack was hanging out with us in the studio just a few weeks ago, and he pretty much stayed silent the entire time. And then, like, right as we were kind of wrapping things up, he said, "Hey, you should make that last chorus in Cheap Wine a key change." And I was like, I totally trust this guy. He's got the experience and the resume and the portfolio to give me that advice and make me realize that I should take it.
I think that's smart, too, because that, like, throws the listener off in such a cool way. Like, any songs, I know, it's kind of funny. There's a Tim McGraw song that does that. Live Like You Were Dying.
Does that a lot, too. Yeah.
I used to cover that song at parties.
Dude, I don't care what anybody says. If you hate country or not, Tim McGraw slays it on that song.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
the key change at the end is like one of the most impactful parts of a song. It's something I'll never forget.
It really gives you chills. So much so that a buddy of mine, Chase Duncan, he's another musician here in town. I sent him the record because he's playing my album release show here at Craft and Vinyl on November 1st. And the one comment he had for me was, "I just wanted to give you an attaboy for throwing in that key change at the end of Cheap Wine."
Yeah.
And I wanted to take credit for it, and I totally did, but it was all Jack Snyder.
You heard it here, folks.
Now, so we covered a little bit about Bucket List, but I want to talk about your EP, I Try Not to Think About the Past. Tell me a little bit about that. What was the process of creating that like, the writing process?
Oh, man, that was... so I guess I should have really started at the beginning. In 2014, I moved into a new home and built a new studio. And I'd recorded a 10-song album called Some Things Never Change. And 4 of the songs from the first record, I Try Not to Think About the Past, and 3 of the songs from Bucket List were on that record. So I'd recorded that record at my house, and I played every instrument, and there was no producer. It was just me. And after I'd spent 6 months or so recording this thing, I realized that it sounded like crap, and I just did not feel comfortable putting it out.
Yeah.
So I kind of screwed around for the next few years, playing in other bands and not taking my own solo music seriously. And then eventually hooked back up with my producer, Tim Waters, at Radio City Records.
Okay.
And he said, "Hey, man, I know you've got all these songs. Let's just start laying stuff down, do some demos, and see where it goes." And eventually we had done about 5 tracks. And I said, all right, this is enough to package up an EP and put it out, and that'll just give me something to start with. Just to sort of establish myself as a solo artist as opposed to a drummer or, all the myriad other things that I was doing in the local scene.
Okay.
So Tim and I really just threw that thing together. We called it a tour EP. A tour EP is what a lot of bands will print just to have something to show off what songs they're playing on that current tour. They may not put it on Spotify. They may not put it out on the internet. It's just kind of something to give to the fans or sell to audience members while they're on a specific run. It's like when you're in a band and your set list changes every few months. It was kind of representing that idea that this is just what I'm playing right now.
Okay.
And things might change in the future. And they did. So yeah, it turned out to be a fun little listen.
For sure.
But it was more of a stepping stone than anything. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Now, you have a very, I want to put it unique but refreshing sound. So, I mean, what do you attribute to that? I mean, what are your inspirations in terms of music in general? Now, I know every band that we've talked to, when we talk about inspirations, they always name inspirations in another genre because everyone's inspired by so many different things. I mean, what is that for you?
So I constantly rip off my inspirations. I don't think I have an original thought in my head. The reason I started playing music as a solo artist is because of Kevin Devine, who's a sort of indie folk singer-songwriter, and a band called Nutrimilk Hotel. They were like an indie psychedelic.
I've heard of them before. When I was in
they're-
recording school, somebody was
They're
talking
fantastic.
about that band.
Yeah, so Nutrimilk Hotel was around in the 90s, and they're sort of a psychedelic folk rock band, and I can't even describe how much they've inspired me over the years. There's a sort of punk rock attitude to it, but it's still this indie folk style music. So I'd been listening to that for years, playing in punk bands for years, and then decided to sort of try to meld everything into a more indie or more, I don't want to use the word mainstream, but a more like mainstream indie sound that could be relatable to people who like pop punk or folk or indie or rock.
Yeah.
It sort of became this unique sound, which I jokingly call existential office punk, because of a lot of the lyrics. The lyrics are very existential.
Yeah.
I spent the better part of my 20s working in an office and having unique experiences because of my day job. So I called it office punk because I'm 30 years old, still listening to punk rock, but I go to work in a tie every day.
Right.
So that was just a way to describe myself more than the music. But my influences for the first record were bands like The Vaccines, Moose Blood, Green Day, definitely Nutrimilk Hotel. And then on the second record, I had so many influences. The first couple songs, Tombstone and Rock Bottom, were really unique to me. I couldn't pinpoint in my mind where I was being influenced or inspired. Make the Oceans Move, totally ripped off bands like Go Radio. In Cheap Wine, that's just sort of a punk song. I don't really know who I could describe my influence as. But those are just some of the bands that have influenced me or inspired me over the years that have been recording these songs.
Nice.
Absolutely. Do you, so I guess kind of going back on the theme of your last EP, I try not to think about the past.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any regrets or anything? You kind of like going like moving forward with your music now. Like, what do you wish you could have done differently so far?
I wish I could have done it sooner.
Okay.
If the regrets you're referring to are simply about my music.
Well, I mean, I guess anything.
in general?
Anything you want to share. I don't want to.
okay.
You don't have to get. I mean,
All
it's,
right,
it's up to you.
Let me put my therapy cap on here.
Yeah. Well,
So
it started from the womb.
I was I was in a band in 2010, and we were marginally successful at the time, and we sold a lot of records, had thousands and thousands of fans on the internet and views and plays, and then out of nowhere we sort of broke up. And I decided that I would work as a solo artist. And I had immediately gotten offers from publishing companies and management companies. And then, for personal reasons, decided that I was just going to go back to college and get a day job and never do music again. And the years went by and the years went by. And then a few years ago, I'd got an offer to be a tour manager on some Vans Warped Tour dates for a friend's band.
Wow.
And I took that. And it got me back into the music scene. And then that was when I told my buddy Tim, the guy that produced all my music, I said, hey, man, I think I'd like to get this thing going again. And I was immediately met with local success, regional success. It's really kind of culminated in something that is growing beyond my control.
Okay.
And I say to myself, I wish I'd done this sooner.
For sure.
Because think of where I would be at age 30 now,
Right.
if I had just stuck with it back in 2010. So I tell people every day, don't wait, do it today. You could die tomorrow. So don't give up, even when you're broke and you're living in your parents' basement. I know it sucks, but
Yeah.
it will get you toward your objective that you're trying to reach if you just keep at it and don't give up.
Yeah, it's
and
about
I gave up.
persistence.
Right.
My one regret is that I gave up.
Okay. And like, I mean, it's really, I don't want to say cool hearing about that. It's cool that we're talking about this right now. I think me, Zach, and myself have definitely learned like the whole like do it, just
Yeah.
start something. Like, you know, with the whole Enkindled thing with our band, you know how much like planning was done before we actually did anything.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and it was like, you know, it took a we call her our business consultant. We've talked about her before. Her name's Jamie.
Okay.
I think it took her really to kind of, push us into where, like, hey, fucking do it. Like, start.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't talk about it.
She got sick of us just doing busy work, and not recording any podcasts and not doing anything we were talking about, just doing, spending so much time planning to everything. She was like, you want me to buy you guys dresses, or are you actually going to get out there?
What size are you, Alonzo? I don't want to talk about it.
But, back to what you were talking about, I think what's amazing about music is if you're serious about music, that itch never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it hasn't.
Yeah, and that's what, there's something special about that. Same with art. When you're serious about what you do, no matter how much you try to put it away in the back of your mind, that itch never goes away.
Yeah, I had taken about 6 years off, and those were the worst years of my life because I was so unhappy. I wasn't doing what I felt that I was born to do, what I really wanted to do, how I wanted to spend my time.
For sure.
And I learned that the hard way. So if any listeners or either of you can take any advice from me, don't give up on your dreams because I am living proof that they can come true.
Wow.
For sure.
Well, that's
absolutely.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear.
And that's
It
touching
really
to hear.
Yeah. Getting deep on.
So you brought up.
So where are those tissues? I'm crying over here. Just kidding.
You need tissues?
We need a second. Walks away.
This is the part of the podcast where we feature some music from the artist's acoustic set. This first one's called Tombstone from his upcoming EP, Bucket List.
Hi, my name is Zach Frost, and this song is called Tombstone. When I was young, my father told me, son, if you love someone, you've got to let them know. When I grew up and I had learned enough, I had lived and loved, and it goes to show that there is a debt that we all must pay. But I'm not buying in today. I wanna live, I wanna love. I'm not content with just enough. White picket fence, a garden and 2 kids, just like the Joneses. What a fucking nightmare. I'll take my strings over anything at a diamond ring to keep the missus happy. And there is a debt that we all must pay, but I'm not buying in today. I wanna live, I wanna love. I'm not content with just enough. And I knew a man too proud to stay with his family, so he replaced his wife and kids with overtime and contract bits. When they grew up, they couldn't fend or make amends. No competence, and it's plain to see that your family is all you need. It's all you need. It doesn't matter what it says on your tombstone. When it's too late, you'll be soaking in regret. Oh, it doesn't matter what it says on your tombstone, no. Just as long as you made the doesn't matter when I was young. It 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 doesn't matter.
Back to the podcast.
So you mentioned the tour manager gig that you were working on. And I saw in your press kit that you sent us that you've done some touring internationally. What's that all about?
Oh, man, that's just the longest story ever. I'll try to condense it. I had been in like the school band in high school, and we had an opportunity to spend a lot of time in London, England, performing over there.
That's badass.
Then the next year, I moved to Germany as an exchange student, and I got lodged with this family who had a son my age who had a home recording studio. He owned every instrument, and we recorded a record over in Germany in 2006. And then we played a ton of shows. We were kids. We were just kind of screwing around. And then 2 years ago, he sent me a text message and said, hey, I'm playing at Carnegie Hall in Manhattan. I would love for you to come out and hang out with me. I'm playing with a bunch of the cast of Pitch Perfect. We're doing an a cappella show at Carnegie Hall. And I was like, what? How did that happen? He had gotten discovered on YouTube by the music director for Pitch Perfect, the whole franchise.
Gotcha.
So we went out there and hung out with him for like a week, and that sort of started opening some doors. He continues to live in Germany. And then a few months later, I was on tour. I had been hired to play drums for a band on Victory Records, which is, or at least was, some years ago, pretty reputable label before they were involved in some financial lawsuits, but I won't get into that. So I was playing for this band, and coincidentally, I was walking right in front of Carnegie Hall. We were going out to lunch at this ramen place, and my buddy texts me and says, hey, I'm in this new band. We just shot a music video in Italy. You should check us out. I loved what I heard, and I said, hey, man, how would you feel about me coming out and just hanging out on the road, being a roadie, so to speak? And that culminated in me playing some more gigs abroad. And then just last year, I toured with them twice in Germany, and they're constantly on the road every day. They're playing gigantic music festivals. They're playing little rock clubs, and I'm just along for the ride. So next month, I'll be back hanging out with the guys. We're going to be in Denmark.
Wow.
And then just hanging out, kind of networking and doing some recording, doing some photo shoots. The thing that most people don't realize about being in the music industry is that 99% of it has nothing to do with music. It's all administrative work.
Yeah,
like I said,
absolutely.
recording and photo shoots and booking and writing out your social media plans. So these guys are the biggest sweethearts on the planet. They're always putting me up, making sure I have a place to stay and food to eat, and they make it very easy to travel halfway across the world and take a risk and do something crazy. So I've been across the pond, I can't even count how many times at this point, and played quite a bit of shows, whether it was in a cafe or in a parade or in a park or at a music festival. It's just, like I said earlier, it's just a fire that can't get put out.
It's cool that you have like a family, just across the world. Through music, brought you together.
It's been, I never even thought that something like this would happen, but just through being persistent over the years and making friends and networking, they've become brothers to me, and I am so grateful to have them in my life.
For sure.
They're in a band called Road String Army. For those of you at home listening, check out Road String Army.
Gotcha.
So now what's it like playing shows overseas? Is there any difference? What's it like for you?
Excuse me. Well, I hate to say it, but it's the complete opposite of playing in the United States. Oh, pardon me.
Oh, yeah, you're all
Water
right.
went down the wrong pipe.
No, you're good.
It's the complete opposite of playing in the United States in a good way.
Okay.
So I cannot tell you how many concerts I've played where nobody showed up, or if they did show up, they were talking the whole time, or they weren't interested, they weren't paying attention, they weren't buying merchandise, the venues didn't want to pay us. I've had every single negative experience you could imagine here in the States. But in Europe, it's the complete opposite. You always get paid, you always get fed, you always have a place to stay. Everybody stops what they're doing and listens and claps and cheers and buys your merchandise.
That's so cool. It sounds like a dream come true.
It is a dream come true. After you play, they're all buying you drinks. They're all telling you how talented and how much fun they had. And that's why I love going over there, because you feel like a rock star when you're over there. And here you just feel like the opposite.
Right.
So I really enjoy going over there. It's, it's like winning the lottery. You just have so much fun, and you feel so valued.
For sure. So how long have you been creating music? Just, you yourself. How long in your life have you spent making music? When did it hit you?
I got my first guitar when I was 8 years old. And then didn't really do anything with it, even though my grandmother was a guitar teacher. Didn't really have, at 8 years old, you're not that interested in music.
Right.
When I was 10, I started taking private drum lessons, and I was in the band at school, jazz band, marching band, concert and symphonic band. I've done everything at this point. And then when I was 18 is when I discovered Neutral Milk Hotel and Kevin Devine, and those two inspired me to play more folk-style music, just acoustic guitar, something simple. And then I started playing in some pop-punk bands, and I started writing more pop-punk music or punk rock-style music. And now I'm 30 years old, so I look back at age 10, 20 years ago, is when I really started this journey. And I look back in my 8th grade yearbook, and I was voted most likely to be a rock star. And I still have the yearbook. And I still have the picture. So I hope I'm making them proud in some capacity.
Called it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome to hear. So I guess looking back on everything now to like right now, would you say you're pretty thankful for your experiences so far? Like, taking those 6 years off, you think like, okay, like maybe that's what I need. I know you said you wish you would have started sooner, but almost you think those 6 years was important to you in some way?
Absolutely. They taught me to realize, what's that phrase? You don't know what you have until it's gone.
Yeah.
Music was gone from my life, and it taught me to value that more because I didn't really have that hobby in my life anymore. They were good years because I was able to go back to college, and I finished my bachelor's degree. I got a job, and I bought a house and built a studio at the house, and it's given me a lot of financial stability. It's also given me a lot of life experiences, which a lot of musicians will never receive.
Absolutely.
Because there are some kids who get signed right out of high school, and they'll never know what it's like to have a normal job or to go to college or to have normal relationships, whether it be with a friend or a romantic partner. I'm very fortunate that I've had pretty much every experience in the spectrum. I've slept in vans. I've had to work under the table because I just couldn't get a job. And now to the point where I'm feeling very comfortable and secure in my position where I can still play music and be happy with it and be successful with it in some capacity as well. So I think it's good to get different life experiences. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Okay. So would you think that would be like one of your most important pieces of advice too, besides like not giving up, but like don't like do you think people should experience like kind of real life to some degree? I guess did I ask that weird? Is that
no?
a weird
That makes
question?
perfect sense.
Yeah.
I like that you asked it that way because we are all at the moment local musicians. We're not making millions of dollars or anything like that. So we are living normal life. And we are getting those experiences every day.
Right.
You guys are college students or you're working a job or whatever you're doing. That's normal life, man. That's what everybody else is doing too.
Right.
But you're taking a hobby and you're turning it into something productive and potentially successful financially.
That's
working,
a goal, of course.
Well, there are more opportunities now than there ever have been to make money in music.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I firmly believe that you do have those opportunities. You have that potential. And you can live... I always use the phrase, I have one foot in both worlds.
Okay.
I have one foot in the music industry, one foot in a normal life where I have a little house in the suburbs and I have a job and I have a girlfriend. And but then I go to Europe for substantial lengths of time, and before you know it, you feel like that's your life. And you wake up in a different country and you're you have to go get on stage or be a roadie and load in all the equipment and do sound check, and you're like, yeah, this is my life. And then a week later, you're flying back home, clocking in at a day job at 8 o'clock every morning.
Yeah, so you have two separate lives.
That's weird to think about. Yeah,
it's very strange, but I'll tell you why I do it, because I read an article. Do you guys know the DJ Girl Talk?
No.
His name is Greg Gillis. He's from Pittsburgh, and he's a very successful festival DJ. He does mashups.
Okay.
And in 2008, I was really into Girl Talk, and I read an interview that he did where he described how he was literally leading a secret life where his parents didn't even know that he was a musician. He was working in some like high-tech medical lab doing lab research and making a lot of money doing so, and DJing on the weekends. And this was the coolest thing to me, when I was, 19 or 20 years old back then. This guy was working a normal job, and then on Friday night, he would fly to Los Angeles or New York City or London and play a big festival and get paid thousands of dollars, and then fly back home Sunday night so he could be back at work on Monday morning. Wow. And I was like, holy shit, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. I'm going to start doing that. And I wish that I could find that article today, but I can't. So it lives on in my memory. And that's what I've been doing. This weekend, I drove up to Toledo, played for a bunch of strangers who were singing along to all my songs and just giving me the most coolest compliments. I just couldn't believe it. And then I went back to work like nothing had changed. And I continue to do that. Like I said, I'm going back to Europe next month. And I definitely feel like I'm leading a secret double
you're a double
life.
agent.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's really, really like, I just like kind of the hearing your experiences. I mean, I think to anyone that's listening and like to ourselves too, as being musicians also, I mean, that's really inspiring to see that, like, it's cool seeing like you're hearing your stories about like you are busting your ass, and that's cool to hear. And I guess moving forward, and maybe what was I going to say? I guess about your music. What do you want people to know overall, like about yourself, Zach Frost, and your music, just everything you've done? What do you want people to know moving forward?
I just I want people to know that anything is possible if you work hard enough.
Okay.
The first time that I went on Varen's Warped Tour, my roommate at the time told me, man, you're so lucky to be able to get to do these things. And I said, thank you, but I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to tell me that I didn't work hard enough and that I got lucky instead.
Okay.
And I don't think he meant it that way, but at the time, that's how I felt.
Right.
Because a lot of people called me a sellout. They told me that I didn't earn what I was doing, that I just got lucky. And I tried to let him know that he could be doing the same things if he just worked hard enough. And this is sort of a recurring theme. People always ask me, how do you do all these things that you do? And I tell them I just work my ass off.
Right.
And that's how things get accomplished. No one hands you anything in life. Mm-hmm. No one's ever handed me anything.
And you should never expect anything either. I think that's a big thing. There's people our age every day. We see it every day. It's like, why the fuck do I don't have this or that? Because you don't do shit.
You're not working for it.
Because you're not working for it.
And a lot of people don't realize that I constantly work to the detriment of my own health and my own finances. I keep an accounting of all the money that I've spent on music, equipment, recording, merch, etc. And I keep receipts for everything, for my accountant. And then I keep a list of all the income that I've received. And I'm not going to divulge that information here, but it's pretty embarrassing how little income I've received compared to how much money I've spent on this project.
For sure.
So it's not like I'm out here making money or people are handing me things. You guys came to me. I do solicit a lot of press, but you guys came to me, and I feel like that's a telltale sign that if you work hard enough, opportunities will be presented to you.
Absolutely.
For sure.
They're not going to hand you anything.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to preach to anyone.
No, but I mean, we would have never found you had you not been busting your ass and getting your name out there.
Exactly, and thank you for that, because it makes me feel very validated to know that you found me through organic means,
right,
and not that I was soliciting or begging you to take me on your show.
And I think that's something that should be said too. Is like anyone we've talked to, no one's like outright begged and stuff or anything like that. But it's really cool when you talk to people and just going through the grapevine and hearing people. And I think it's your actions is what causes like oh, okay, like we should talk to this guy, or like this is someone we should know,
Right.
or whatever it is. And I think that's really, really cool. So I guess bring everything to a conclusion here. November 1st, EP drop. Anything else you want? Where can they find your music at?
So all of my music can be found on streaming platforms such as Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music, Amazon Music. I also have free downloads at my website, zachfrost.com/music. Those are hosted through Bandcamp. I also put out a lot of unique content on social media, so follow me on Facebook and Instagram at ZachFrostMusic. I just wanted to thank the two of you for having me on your show today. I've had a wonderful time.
Well, thank you for
we
being
appreciate-
here.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Zach.
As always, thanks for listening. Here is the second track from the acoustic set, performed by Zach Frost, presented by Craft and Vinyl.
Hi, my name is Zach Frost, and this song is called You Can't Go Back. Nostalgia's a disease without a vaccine. There's not a cure for it. But I got the shot that couldn't be bought. There's not a store for it. I try not to think about the past, not to think about the past, not to think about the past. I try just to leave it in the background, leave it in the back of my mind. I bang my head against the wall, looking out for new resolve. Will I ever find it all? You could never make the call. I try not to think about the past. Nostalgia's a disease without a vaccine. There's not a cure for it. But I got the shot that couldn't be bought. There's not a store for it. I try not to think about the past, not to think about the past, not to think about the past. I try just to leave it in the background, leave it in the back of my mind. I bang my head against the wall, looking out for new resolve. Will I ever find it all? You could never make the call. I try not to think about you can't go back. You can't go back. You can't go back. You can never go. You can't go back. You can't go back. You can't go back. You can never go. You can't go back. You can't go back. You can't go back. You can never go. You can't go back. You can't go back. You can't go back. You can never go back. I tried not to think about the past, not to think about the past, not to think about the past. I tried just to leave it in the background, leave it in the back of my mind. I tried not to think about the past, not to think about the past, not to think about the past. I tried just to leave it in the background, leave it in the back of my mind. I bang my head against the wall, looking out for new resolve. Will I ever find it all? You could never make the call. I try not to think about the past.